Welcome back to Find My Way Home Live, where weekly we get together with several Find My Way Home expert mortgage originators, and we talk about a topic that is important to borrowers, home buyers, refinancers around the country. And tonight we are going to talk about a really important topic. Why are veteran home buyers using their VA benefit that they earned by serving our market, getting their offers accepted? We're going to talk about some of the misconceptions behind the program that sellers have, hopefully educate sellers as to why it's one of the more flexible programs and more beneficial to accept and work with. And we'll go through that and also talk about some of the pitfalls you can run into as a veteran trying to navigate some of the online information there. So why don't we just start off by introducing our guests tonight? So to my left here, I think it looks on the camera, is Jason Sharon. He's a broker owner. You're in South Carolina, Jason?
Correct. Yes, South Carolina.
And Scott, your company recently rebranded to Go Rascal is the name,
Yeah,
and you
that's right.
guys are in Brooklyn, but and both of you guys. So why I'm gonna step back after introducing you. Tell us a little bit about your companies, how you got in the business, how you got to Find My Way Home, and both of you serve multiple states. We're Bywise for me here in California. We only help borrowers currently in the state of California, but you guys cover multiple states. Jason, why don't you tell us how you got to Find My Way Home? Tell us a little bit about your company and what states you help people in.
Sure. So here at Homeowners Inc., we're located in Charleston, South Carolina, but we're licensed in 7 states, basically all the Southeast: West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama is where we are. How I got to Find My Way Home is by my friendship with you and Scott. We've been sitting next to each other at mortgage conferences for 4 or 5 years now, and rubbing elbows. And you guys came up with this amazing idea, and you reached out to me, and I'm honored that you even considered me on the initial list. I feel humbled being next to someone like Scott, who's just a monster producer, puts me to shame than what he knows. So that's how I get it. It's just being the right place, right time, rubbing elbows for the right people.
Perfect. And how about yourself, Scott?
Yeah, sure. Yep, you were right. We're in Brooklyn, New York here. Name of my company's Go Rascal. I used to run a different brokerage, so it's rebranded, but also kind of restructured, started up, launched a new company when I brought on a new partner. Similar to Jason, we're in a bunch of states. I think we're up to 13 now, but
Nice.
New York, as you can imagine, you got Jersey, Connecticut, PA, stone's throw. A lot of people commute into New York, so we meet them at networking events and whatnot, and they don't, own homes in New York. I used to live and built a decent part of my book of business when I was living in Cali, in Los Angeles. So we've got a footprint there, and then kind of scattered around in other states. But yeah, similar to Jason, I've known your buddy Scott for a while through other organizations we're a part of. I've heard him speak a million times. He's an incredible marketing brain, and so when he put this thing together that invited us in and allowed us to collaborate and grow our brand with the Find My Way Home brand, it was kind of a no-brainer, and have really enjoyed I think year. It's almost at it. We're almost at, or it's been a year, I think, over a year now. It flew by since we got going on this. Or no, just about a year now, right? Like June, July.
Yeah, about that time frame when it kicked off. And
Right.
just for any of you that stumbled upon this and don't know what Find My Way Home, the website, the YouTube channel is, and what the Find My Way Home expert network is, my business partner Scott Shang, back in the meltdown when things went crazy in 2007, 2008, there weren't a lot of loans to do. He taught himself WordPress, and he started blogging, educating people about what's going on in the housing market, where are things at, and how can you take advantage of this downturn to work to your benefit. He helped a bunch of teachers in California, a lot of down payment assistance programs. And what we started seeing is people reaching out from around the country. And what it became was people getting misinformation, wrong answers from new or inexperienced loan officers, call center loan officers, some of the big marketing organizations that want to just push everyone through to inexperienced people in the call center and give them the wrong information. So we end up here. I say what I'm about to say, not to pat us on the back, but to give an idea. As 3 individual originators, I just ran the numbers in the last 14 months, we've helped over 1,000 families Scott did a ton. Jason did a ton. We did a good chunk out here in California. So that's not to say, hey, we're great. It's to say this is what we do. A lot of those were hard files. They were files that came from Find My Way Home. Someone that was told no and said, that doesn't sound right, or I don't think that's the right answer. And then on top of that, when we're talking about VA loans tonight, the reason why these two gentlemen are here with me, we are also members in another group called Vetted VA. A friend of ours, Christopher Griffith, started that group, and it is an online Facebook group. So any of you veterans watching this, if you're not a member of Vetted VA, go out there and check it out. You can get any and all your questions answered. Jason is the original moderator out there. We are all, as vetted or mortgage loan originators, are moderators there and answer a lot of the questions. So that's really where this discussion is going to come from tonight. So why don't we start, and either one of you can jump in with this, but either just the misconceptions that sellers have of why they may be down on accepting a VA offer relative to other offers. But then the flip side of that is the actual truth of the matter is the major flexibilities that we have with VA loans. Scott, you want to kick us off on that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of misinformation. It's a lot of like probably preconceived ideas of like what a veterans bring into the table from a qualifying standpoint. I think, if you start with, we're in a market now where everything's competitive, multiple offers. It's often 10, 20 offers, and a seller is often going to be more interested in someone that's putting a lot of money down than someone that's putting a little money down. And while to some regard there's some merit to more money down equals potentially more flexibility when it comes to things like possibly appraisals coming in short or whatnot, there's often usually kind of counterpoints to those things. So you take that first kind of argument, veterans are entitled to 100% financing, assuming they can qualify. And appraisals on VA loans have the most outlets and opportunities to correct value, to get ahead of the value before it's even determined by the appraiser through something called Tidewater. Even if the value comes in low, you can appeal it through ROVs and all this terminology. These are things that literally don't exist outside of the VA sphere. And once an appraised value comes in, sure, you can appeal it in other types of loans, conventional jumbo, but you have much less leverage to do so than you do
Scott,
on a VA appraisal. Yeah.
Why don't we completely unpack that? So
Yeah.
hopefully we have some sellers out there watching and understand the difference, because you said something very important. Most VA loans are zero down. So if the appraisal comes in low, the seller's thinking, hey, they don't have any money to cover an appraisal gap. But an appraisal gap is probably least likely on a VA loan of any type of loan. It obviously comes down to the property. The property is going to appraise for what it's going to appraise for. But walk us through what happens with a conventional loan, a jumbo loan, an FHA loan. If an appraiser goes out and doesn't think the value is there, then contrast that with what happens on a VA loan and how that Tidewater process works.
Sure. So yeah, for starters, non-VA loans, there's no transparency. An appraiser gets assigned. They're certified as appraisers, but VA loans, the appraisers are certified VA appraisers. There's like an extra level of certification. And so on a regular non-VA loan, appraiser goes out, praises the property. The first time you see the value is after it's delivered, and he or she has put their stamp on it. And once someone has kind of decided on a value, it's really hard to overturn their opinion. The key word here is opinion. And so because appraisals are just they follow certain parameters and guidelines, and they're required to, but ultimately it's an opinion. It's very hard to change someone's opinion outside of a material mistake that they've made on the appraisal. So that's non-VA. Comes to VA. And so anyway, there is an appeal process on non-VA loans, but again, it's very imperfect. You have to take many steps to actually get to the appraiser and get your message to the appraiser, and then many steps for that message to be delivered back to you and their response. And it's just the communication is clunky, and it rarely results in an improved value and a benefit to the home buyer and the seller, frankly, to close the transaction as everyone intended. With a VA loan, there's something called Tidewater. When that's initiated, activated, we get notified in advance by the appraiser that he can't find proper comps, or based on his research, he's not confident, or at that moment, he won't be able to bring in the appraised value to meet the purchase price, right? So we're literally being told that in advance. And we have 48 hours, I believe it's 48 hours to get with the real estate agents, both sides. Like, everyone gets together, rallies around this opportunity, goes back to the appraiser with additional information. And they're right. It's so common that next thing you know, you get the appraisal back and boom, you've got it on the value. The
And
appraisers, yeah.
what I was to say, Scott, is think about that. It's the psychology of the difference of the two processes.
Correct.
In every other loan, the appraiser says, "Here's my opinion of value," and you have to go back and say, "Here's why you're wrong."
Right.
On the VA process, the Tidewater, the appraiser gets to come from a position of grace almost and say, "Hey guys, I don't see it. I'm not seeing it. Do you have more
Help me out.
additional
Help me
information?
out.
Help me out." And we get to come back and go, "Cool. We appreciate you reaching out. Here's all the information we have." And it's more collaborative versus combative. You mentioned something very important on non-VA loans. It's a very low percentage of appraisal rebuttals that we get any change to the value. Most often the answer is pound sand. Now, both of you guys chime in on this. With the Tidewater, Jason, Scott, how often, what percentage of the time do you see either the value actually coming in at the sale price, or at least coming closer than what they were initially telling you they were seeing?
So I've not had the best luck on the Tidewater. Yeah, I probably have. If I was going to pick a percentage, I'd probably say 10 to 15% of the Tidewaters come in at value. We don't know what the initial value, or very rarely do you know what value the appraiser's thinking, unless the appraiser slips up and tells you. You're not going to know. But the next step after Tidewater is reconsideration of value, and that's another formal process that you have where you take the veteran writes a narrative of, hey, dear VA, it's a letter from the veteran to the VA proper. Dear VA, I believe the house is worth this because of this reason, this reason, this reason. You also provide additional comps, and I'm probably batting 65-70% on ROVs because it's directly to the VA, and then the VA has the independence or the authority to manage to swing the value. I think up to 15%. And the VA truly wants to put veterans in homes. They know that it's an amazingly small default rate. This is the lowest default rate of any program. So even if they put the value a little bit high, they know there's not a risk there for the lender or for the taxpayers through the VA, that there's going to be a default and a loss on that mortgage. It's just so minuscule.
And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record just recapping this. So Scott walks us through Tidewater, where you get to basically collaboratively work towards a value if there's a disagreement. And if it still comes in low, Jason just walked us through this reconsideration of value process where you don't have to go back to the same appraiser and say, "Hey, I still think you're wrong." You go to the VA and say, "Hey, the appraiser that you assigned came to a value. We still think it's wrong. Here's more information." So you have two chances to get to it. And I would bet from my personal experience, from the other folks that I've talked to, I'll bet you that 65-70% likelihood of getting back to the value that the home should have been appraised at or that the home sold for is accurate. So for sellers at home, yeah, they don't have a VA buyer may be less likely to cover an appraisal gap. They're also far less likely to have an appraisal gap. So that's one of the big flexibilities. Now let's talk a little bit
Hey, can
about.
I add one more thing to what you said
Sure,
there?
sure.
The less likely to be able to cover appraisal gap, I don't know is a real accurate point, because just because the veteran doesn't have to put money down doesn't mean they're not putting money down. And I don't know what the stats are, but it's not small numbers of the number of veterans that do put money down. And if they are intending to put money down and the appraisal comes in low, well, they still have the option to go to 0%, use the intended down payment to cover their appraisal gap. And a lot of them have money saved. There are a handful that don't. You got an E3 or an E4 trying to buy his first house, but you've got a E6, E7, or O3 or O4 that's buying. Chances are they've got $10,000-$20,000 in their thrift savings plan. They've got the ability to cover appraisal gap. They're just choosing to exercise their entitlement for 100% down. It's just there's a lot more flexibility there.
No, you're 100% correct, because most most buyers have X amount of money, and if you're having to put the down payment, it takes a big chunk of that. It's pretty rare. I've had it happen, but it's rare that a veteran comes and says, "I have no money. I want to use my zero down, and I need a lender or a seller credit to cover all my costs. I don't have any money." They generally do have funds available. They'd like to not use them, but they definitely have them available there. So let's also talk about some of the misconceptions of VA. 20 years ago plus, there was a long list of VA non-allowable fees that the veteran was not able to pay, and the seller was expected to pick those up. They could be picked up other ways with a lender credit, but a lot of times it fell back on the seller. So I still feel like there's a ton of realtors out there and a ton of sellers that have that stigma. They don't understand that it's been thoroughly modernized and it's no different than any other loan in terms of what the seller is expected to do from that perspective. You guys have any thoughts on that, and maybe what we can be doing to educate sellers and agents a little bit better that that's not the case?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the sellers don't have enough experience to have their own real seated, deep rooted opinion, right? The root cause of a seller having all these misconceptions is the listing agent
Listing agent.
not being educated. And either the listing agent's not educated, they haven't taken the time, they just don't have the experience, or they have really bad experiences because they dealt with really crummy loan officers like Veterans United or Navy Fed loan officer or somebody. And I know we'll talk about that later, but they probably those agents probably had very bad experiences with a crummy loan officer on a VA loan or two or three in the past. So therefore, it's we have to pull double duty on educating the agent, on the non-allowables versus allowables, all the other stuff that we'll talk about again. But it really comes down to using a real expert, loan officer that you get through whatever our group or whatever, that can then be your advocate to the listing agent, so that way they can go educate you. They can hopefully we can influence them to change their mind about and not go put a poison idea in the seller to where they don't want to accept VA loans.
And it's a cascade event because to get a listing agent to educate a listing agent and get them to open up their eyes to the truths and realities about how great VA loans are. The best way to do that is for them to be a buyer's agent at one point, and for them to we educate them through the process because we're bringing them a VA buyer and they need to get their buyer's offer accepted. So it's in their best interest to learn all these things and go to that listing agent and represent their buyer appropriately. So once you educate a buyer's agent who isn't well educated on this and hasn't worked with a lot of veterans before, next time they're a listing agent, boom, we're now, it spreads that way. And now they're a listing agent as well as a buyer's agent, and they will accept more VA offers and recommend those to their sellers, or at least equally share, offers, and not handicap or say that, put it at the bottom because it's a VA loan offer. So starts with educating the buyer's agents because they're going to naturally be motivated to learn that, to represent their buyer, to get their offer accepted. It's in their best
Yes,
interest.
that's a good point. I hadn't thought about it that angle.
And I'm glad you mentioned the buyer's agent, because that was the thing that I was going to say. One of the crazy things we see is we pre-approve a golden VA borrower. We say, hey, go out into the world, find a home. And they come back and say, hey, I talked to my realtor. They say you can't get VA offers accepted. So they want to know what I can qualify for with the conventional loan and how much I have to put down. So you had mentioned that educating the buyer's agents and walking them through this is super helpful, but it's shocking how many of them, and I don't even know, honestly, I don't know that it's a misunderstanding so much as a fear, because we have the same thing with FHA offers. You guys probably hear the same thing. I have clients all the time that there's no way they can go conventional. It's FHA, and they go out and the realtor calls up. Are you sure you can't do conventional? I can't get FHA offers accepted in my market. And I go, cool. Where's your market? Is it, well, here's 3 that we got accepted in the last 3 months. So I mean, do we need one of those agents that can actually get those offers accepted? It's a minority of agents, but there's a mindset out there that they'll say, my market is different. And it's funny, we're in 3 very different markets, right? I mean, Scott, you're in a bunch of states, and there's probably a little bit of overlap with Jason, but every agent thinks they're in a unique market, and for the last 3 years we've all been in the same market. It's
It's a unique
nuts.
market. Yeah. Yeah.
It's nuts everywhere, and it's hard for realtors everywhere. It's hard for lenders everywhere. It's hard for buyers everywhere. The only person it's been easy for is sellers the last few years. So it's funny having to go through that conversation, but educating buyers agents, and really, I don't know what you guys do to do that, but my first thing is, cool, please let me talk to your agent, whoever you're going to select. Let me refer you to an agent if you don't have one who has experience with VA loans. And kind of let's step back and talk about what I would say is, it is important that you're working with an agent who has experience with VA loans, so they don't have to be educated by anyone because they've already been through the process. And also the same thing on the mortgage side. We're coming off of a market, where people could say, well, I don't understand VA loans, so go talk to another loan officer. Now with 80% of the refinances gone, every loan officer in the world wants to do every loan. Hey, I've never done a non-QM loan, I'm going to figure it out. I've never done a VA loan, I'm going to figure it out. So why don't you guys talk a little bit about why it's important on both sides that you have a realtor that's experienced with representing buyers using VA financing, and probably more importantly on the loan side, why it's important to use a loan officer who does a volume of VA loans and understands and knows the program and the guidelines.
Well, I think, Josh, it's a bit obvious, but I think in some ways what you're describing isn't the worst thing, right? Because you have all those loan officers like out there used to be able to pick their type of loan, and I'm not going to say they're steering the borrower into a conventional loan VA. Steering's like not really. That's what they think is the best way they're going to get their offer accepted. Conventional loans aren't bad, but like if more of these loan officers out there are finally saying, "All right, I might as well learn VA loans," that's good for us. Sure. Do we want? There's going to be some trouble, some deals that don't go that well for the veteran. The whole experience might not be great, but as long as the veteran closes on their home, they're in their home, and that LO did their first VA deal, and now they're on to their second, third. I think that's great for all of us, right? Like we want every LO out there that's working with a veteran to encourage that veteran, help that veteran in every way possible to get into a home using a VA loan, assuming the veteran wants. I mean, listen, if someone's putting 20% down and they don't have a disability rating and they have great credit and it might be a jumbo, like, don't get us wrong. All three of us are here to say the VA loan is not the perfect loan for every veteran in every circumstance. I mean, that is a fact, and we're all willing to share that. We're not guys that just push VA loans at any cost. It turns out that really most of the time it is the best loan for the veteran, but not always. But I just think, the more, listen, 3 years ago, I was doing one or two VA loans a year before I joined Vetted VA. Why? My marketplace is a little funky. I'm condos and co-ops, a lot of them, right? Being in the New York City area. And even when I'm doing, single family loans on Long Island, whatever, I'm not near a very like big VA and not near a big base or whatever. We got West Point a couple hours north, but they're not in my backyard the way they might be in Southern California, for example, and in South Carolina and whatnot. So I was that guy a few years ago that was like, oh, a VA loan, like there's so much to learn. These are so different. I'm afraid of screwing this thing up. And so, I'm not going to go and, actively try to help veterans out there, work with an independent mortgage broker to get the best rate. And I know we're going to talk about all that. So, yeah, now I'm very experienced. I'm not like Jason. I bother Jason all the time with guideline questions and whatnot. I'm sure Josh, you're right there with him. But it's great, and I know enough to now go and represent my VA buyers, in all the ways we're talking about communicating with both agents and making sure they're getting that fair shake that they deserve when making offers. So
Kind of staying on the topic of it being a very flexible program. So you're saying you were a little spooked off of it and didn't have a lot of experience with it. It's a unique program, but largely unique in flexibility.
and
So
flexibility.
before we talk about the flexibilities, I do want to go back to one last thing. When we're talking about the appraisal, we're talking about values and why we have a lot of flexibility and leeway in values. But Jason, you want to talk to us about the minimum property requirements and why a lot of agents and sellers are freaked out about that also, and why it's generally not an issue, but what are they, and why does it bother and freak out buyers and sellers?
So most real estate agents don't realize that even conventional loans have minimum property requirements, right? So you have to go that education route of, hey, yes, there are minimum property conditions for VA. They're actually many less pages than the FHA and the USDA minimum property requirements, more than conventional. But why you shouldn't be scared about it is there's a formal process, just like the ROV, that a veteran can request a waiver of that minimum property condition. For example, I had a success story where we had an old dilapidated shed, and it was a really old property, and the property was gorgeous. The property was nearly historical, and there's a tremendously old shed on the property that by normal VA standards would need to be repaired and removed, and there was no way you were repairing this. The client actually, during the process of wanting to buy the house, identified the opportunity to sell this shed to a wood reclamation company. So we actually got an offer of like $3,000 from the company of saying, hey, yeah, we'll come take this off your property. We'll give you $3,000 to do it. And I use that as an appeal to the VA. The VA is like, cool, yeah, that's a good idea for the vet. It makes sense. They had a timeline of when they're going to get it done and a dollar amount. And the VA said, yeah, that makes sense. So, it is scary to a lot of people because there are some things that you're not going to be able to waive. But if it makes sense, it's going to work.
Amazing.
And really, for the most part, it comes back to health and safety issues. Things like if there's something that's going to get called out on that VA appraisal, it's something that a conventional buyer, they might have the ability to waive it, but they're probably not going to want to waive it. I don't have this issue a whole heck of a lot. We have it more, like you said, on FHA loans, and even then, it's fairly uncommon and fairly minor to get it brought to standards. And in the current market, even on the FHA ones where we have property conditions, repairs that are required, for the most part, it hasn't been a problem for the seller. We've had our buyer's agent go out, our buyer go out and scrape some paint, tear down a termite infested patio cover, whatever it may be. So again, it's an issue that's kind of overblown and doesn't generally cause us a problem in terms of closing loans. So from that end, let's kind of transition and talk about some of the flexibilities. With almost every other loan program, we have things that are more set in stone. Here's a maximum debt to income ratio. Here's a minimum credit score. A lot of that stuff we don't have with VA loans. So either one of you want to talk about some of your favorite flexibilities in a VA loan that we have that you don't have in other types of loans?
Sure. So I salivate at the opportunity to talk to an agent about this. Very front of the VA guidelines is these guidelines are written as a guide, and an underwriter has the ability to apply common sense to it. So I'll snippet that right from the guidelines and send it to agents to make sure they understand. And then the other part that so many people don't understand is you have double the number of underwriters on a conventional loan than you have for a VA loan. So right, you have PMI. So if you're not putting down 20%, you've got PMI on a conventional loan. Most people don't realize that once the loan is quote unquote clear to close by the lender, it goes to a PMI company who re-underwrites the loan and could produce and will can sometimes produce under additional conditions. So you have one underwriter on VA who is given the authority and the autonomy by the VA to use common sense approach to very fluid, flexible guidelines, like Josh astutely pointed out, of no DTI limit, no minimum credit score, and then contrast that with double the number of underwriters with double the risk of having issues on an underwrite.
So put it into context. It's sometimes shocking to people when they hear the number. Like for each of you, what's the highest debt to income ratio you've ever got approved on a VA loan?
79.
70s.
Yeah.
Mid 70s.
Yeah,
Right.
you hear that, and that's shocking because any other loan program, FHA will let you go to 57, and that's the only thing that will get you close to that. So when you hear 70s regularly, and then the second thing that I hear is that's a dangerous program. We're risking taxpayer money. But Jason, you already said this is the lowest default rates of all loans. So what is the VA doing that they're comfortable lending to such high loan to values and still having such low default rates? They are doing something to make sure our borrowers have the ability to repay. Scott, what do they do in that case?
Yeah, they're doing what's called a residual income calculator, which is just if you think about it, it's probably the most common sense income in it's the most common sense way to determine if someone, after making their mortgage payment, has enough money left over to live, basically, because that's what it's all about, right? Where all these other loans use some of these just blanket like 50% DTI, yet you don't look at any deeper into what someone's lifestyle is and the size of their family, the size of their house, where they live, and other debts they might have, childcare, things like that. I mean, in a time now where costs are running away from us, I would make the argument that VA loans, no matter what their DTI, are going to perform even better because there's that extra piece of analysis done. So residual income calculator is, like I kind of said, but I'll go a little bit deeper, takes into account the size of the house first, right? They apply a factor times the size of the house, and it comes up with what's expected to maintain the property, right? The understanding is the bigger a house, the more things there are to, there's more, costs more to maintain it. So they have to make sure that that's left over in your income after the mortgage payment is taken into consideration. They look at the size of your family. Like I mentioned before, they take into account if you have any larger expenses. Childcare is sometimes a big thing that doesn't show up in the analysis of other types of loans. It shows up here. What else? They look at, Jason, what else am I thinking of here? They take
your payroll taxes.
Yeah, cover your taxes, right? If you're self-employed, or no, right? Either way, right? They take into account your state, federal, Social Security taxes, right? They take everything, not everything under the sun. They don't know about your groceries and things like that, but there still needs to be money left over even after they subtract out all those additional things. So a high debt to income ratio will often get approved on a larger loan amount because the residual income, right? So if someone's debt to income ratio is 70%, that means their housing payment plus what's on their, debts on their credit report could be 7,000 out of $10,000 of income, or it could be 8,000 out of 11,000 or whatever. So the larger you go in loan amount, the more room there might be for that extra income to cover those additional items that we look at, and then there be the money left over to cover everything else. So in summary, it's just an extra way to look at it. It's a different approach. It's a way more common sense black and white approach. And it allows you to have a higher debt to income ratio through that methodology, yet still get approved for your loan. And it's reassuring to the, I've gone through residual income calculations with a veteran before to show them why they're not qualifying. And it's kind of like, okay, cool. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Maybe I shouldn't actually take on this loan. Right. Yeah, let's go lower.
The beautiful thing about it is compare and contrast Scott's scenario there, where that veteran has $3,000 left over at the end of the month, right? So chances are, unless they make some really, really bad gambling decisions at Vegas, they're probably going to have enough money to cover whatever emergency things pop up. And let's say you take that down to an elderly retired couple that maybe he was a Vietnam vet, and they're on limited income. Maybe they've got Social Security and they've got a small military pension, or they've got a small VA disability payment coming in. And let's say their income is only $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month, and maybe their debt to income ratio is only 42%. But there's so much, there's just not that much left over at the end of the month to cover the residual income. So yes, it is snazzy and fun and sexy to think, oh, I can get approved at 79%. But if you have a very low income entering into the equation, like Scott was talking about, then you may fail residual income at a DTI below 50%. And that's the beautiful thing, is it's basically an equal opportunity measuring stick, to where it doesn't matter anything about you except for how much money do you have left at the end of the month, not how much month do you have left at the end of the money.
And it's an awesome flexibility in that it gets people into homes that would be declined on other types of loans, but also with the safety net of a calculation showing they do have enough money to feed and clothe themselves after they pay that mortgage every month. So from there, let's transition to one of the absolute best flexibilities that we have with the VA loan, that we also have with FHA, but for the most part don't really have with conventional, is say that loan does not get approved through the automated underwriting. When we're talking about a 70 DTI, 65, 70, 72 DTI, that has to go through an automated underwriting engine that analyzes the whole file and says, yes, we're good with that. Let's say it comes back and says no. what happens, what are we able to do with the VA loan that we aren't able to do with other types of loans? Scott, you want to jump on that one?
I'll let Jason take the manual underwrites. I like to hear him talk about it.
Sure. Yeah, I do a lot. So last year I closed 291 loans, and I'm not proud of that number. What I'm proud of is that 40 of those were declined somewhere else.
Amazing.
So that's a whole neighborhood. So somebody got pre-qualified by some loan officer. That's a chump, and they went out, got under contract on a house, and got into underwriting, and then got told no. And so they call around, and call around, and 40 of those ended up in my lap, and I closed them anyway. And that's because I understand manual underwriting guidelines because I studied it. So, like Josh was talking about, every file, doesn't matter the flavor, VA, USDA conventional, VA, USDA, FHA conventional, gets submitted to an automatic underwriting system. And that's basically a computer in the sky. It's an algorithm that dissects the file as a whole. It slices that file into multiple layers: credit score, credit history, work history, loan to value, debt to income ratio, assets, a bunch of different layers. Are you getting a gift? Are you not getting a gift? How much do you have in retirement, months of reserves? There's probably 100 different layers. And then that automatic underwriting system assigns a risk factor to each of those layers, and then adds up all those risk factors and gives you one of two responses: either approve or refer. That's your only two options: approve or refer. If you get an approved response, it's an easy peasy loan. Give that guy or gal her keys. Just make sure that all your documentation in the loan match what's on the application that was submitted to the automatic underwriting system. If you get a refer response, it's a whole nother ballgame, whole nother set of requirements that you have to meet. And basically what's going to happen is the underwriter is going to closely scrutinize your payment history, your credit history, your housing history, and your job history, and your assets for the last 24 months. Generally, and this isn't hard and fast, but generally, I haven't lost a manual underwrite with these five requirements. If I meet these five requirements: first is no late payments on the credit report in the last 12 months. Zero, zilch, nada, none. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. No late payments in your credit report on the last 12 months. In the last 2 years, so the last 24 months, if you have up to two 30-day late payments. I'm not talking about a 60. I'm not talking about a 90. I'm not talking about three 30-day late payments. Two 30-day late payments in the last 2 years, you'll probably be good. Third thing is verifiable rent history. So not that you're living on your buddy's couch, paying him $100, $100 a week just to be there, but you're renting from a person, and you can track your checks that you wrote to them, or your Venmo that you sent to them, or renting from an apartment complex that can give you an account of record that for VA the last 24 months of rent has been on time, because that shows that you take your housing payment history, your housing payment, housing situation seriously, and you pay it on time. FHA manual underwrite, you're good at 12 months, not 24. VA is slightly more restricted than that. Fourth thing is stable job history. So no job gaps greater than 30 days, not a job hopper, not more than 3 job changes in the last 24 months. Good, stable job history. And then the fifth thing is 2 months of reserves. Months of reserves means that whatever your mortgage payment is, you've got that much extra money in your bank account or a retirement account that you can get a hold of after your down payment closing costs. So let's say your mortgage payment is going to $1,500. After your closing costs and down payment, you still have $3,000 left over in the bank. That shows that you don't live paycheck to paycheck. It shows that you manage your bills responsibly. So if you got those 5 things on a manual underwrite, I've not lost one of those fights. If you don't have those 5 things, you're rolling the dice that you're going to get the loan or not.
But it is,
there are some flexibilities lender to lender. There are slightly different interpretations, right, Jason? So that's one of the beauties
Yeah,
that we
so
have.
I am slightly conservative on those things, but that's what I find to be a good general baseline, that if you meet that, you should have a strong level of confidence you're going to get approved. If you don't get approved, that your loan officer sucks.
and just we're going to go deeper on that in a minute once we go through all of these VA flexibilities. But what I just want to reiterate: 41 saved files that were turned down. We didn't have that many last year. I don't have the exact count, but I would say every month 1 to 2 deals we do that were turned down. I don't even have to ask Scott. I know the fact is they're closing deals every month that someone was turned down somewhere else. We're in an environment where it's all marketing driven. We have big mega lenders that are the McDonald's of mortgages, and they're turning down good borrowers left and right, either through ignorance or through overlays, which are guidelines that they add on top of the guidelines. And it happens especially with VA loans. But before we get into that, so I should have known to go to Jason with the manual underwrite. But you and I, you being in New York, me being here in California, probably are more benefiting from the blue water than Jason is. Why don't you tell us about that flexibility that, as of 2020, veterans have a very unique benefit that other loan types don't have?
Blue water?
The Blue Water Navy Act.
In
Is
terms
that-
of in terms of the not having loan limits.
Oh, okay, right, sure, yeah, no, of course, thank God. So right, so historically, the VA loan limits were tied to conventional loan limits, and they did away with that in 2020. I didn't know that was they love to throw the
Red
blank
water,
water.
blue water, something's got
Yeah,
water in it.
totally.
It's Blue Water Navy
It's
Act
pretty
is what it was.
it's pretty straightforward as long as you have not used any of your entitlement, which means as long as you don't generally means as long as you don't either have an existing outstanding VA loan, if you recently had one and it was paid off and reestablished your entitlement, and as long as you didn't lose some of your entitlement, that's because you had a problem with the previous VA loan through a foreclosure or any issues. But let's just assume you've never had a VA loan before. There is no limit to your loan size and securing 100% financing on that purchase price. There's literally no limit. There's a threshold at which point the loan becomes a jumbo loan. And sure, lenders have some personal, we talked about overlays. This is a place where even in the mortgage broker channel, where we like to brag that we have the least, if not no overlays, there are absolutely restrictions. It's very hard to get a multi-million-dollar 100% financing VA loan, but I won't sit here and tell you that it's not possible at all. But it's a beautiful thing, Josh, right? I mean, we're talking, in my market, I do, over $1 million VA loans. I wouldn't say I'm the regular, but
They're not infrequent, several times a
they're
year.
not infrequent at all. Absolutely. They're beautiful loans, great terms. They're considered jumbo VA loans, so they're not treated any differently than a jumbo VA loan. That's $1 over the conforming loan limit. And so, it's fantastic for the veteran. And it allows them to play in this space. Like we all know, especially Josh, your market, my market, these are jumbo markets. We're all thrilled that the conventional loan limits have risen nicely, and we could put $647,000 loans into the conventional bucket. I'm still shocked sometimes that's the limit, but I mean, we need to go higher than that. And in the past, we have veterans who want to maximize the benefit of their VA loan options, and getting 100% financing into the millions, into the 1 millions is phenomenal for the veteran. So yeah.
So before we move on to the interesting part of the conversation, or the more interesting part of the conversation, anything
The pink water. Can we talk about the pink water?
Yeah, the purple water. We'll get to it. But any flexibilities, any awesome flexibilities of the VA loan program that we haven't covered yet? Did I miss anything, you guys?
Probably, because there's so many.
Yeah, but the whole idea of you don't have to worry about the number of collections, or the size of the collections, or the number of disputes, or the volume of the disputes on a credit report is amazing. It has significant deleterious effects on FHA and conventional loans and USD loans, where there's not that, it's underwriter discretion if that derogatory credit behavior is more than a year old. You don't have to worry about it. So that's a wonderful flexibility.
So additional credit flexibilities, loan amount flexibilities, debt to income flexibilities in terms of how the appraisal's handled. It really is amazing that there's anything negative about the program, because anytime I get together with loan officers and realtors that do a lot of business with VA financing, They can go on and on and on of great stories of the flexibilities that enabled families to be helped that wouldn't have been any other way. So let's transition
How
from,
about the Earls? I know this is more of a purchase conversation, but how
yeah,
about the Earls? I mean, you have to have a VA loan to be able to do a VA refinance at a later date, and those are hands down the easiest transactions for for us as loan officers, but really it's for the veteran to grab that lower interest rate that they're entitled to in the future. No income check, no appraisals, as streamlined as it comes, and you have to have a VA loan to qualify for that program. So
Yeah,
and
I think we're going to see a boom
flexibility,
of
benefit.
yeah, I think it's amazing benefit. I think we're going to see a boom of Earls late 2023. For the people that are buying now in this higher than recent rate environment, the Earls are going to be an amazing benefit for veterans to capitalize on. In 12, 18 months from now.
And the list goes on, right? Protecting their equity through having to wait a certain amount of time for them to secure an additional loan, so they're not subject to predatory lending. And you know, we could go on for hours.
You just led to the perfect transition. So
Oh, okay.
predatory lending, waiting periods, those came into play not so much because of the bigger call center organizations that we're going to talk about, but a lot of the little refi shops around the country that were doing egregious things, taking advantage of veterans. So the VA did a great job of tightening up the program and protecting veterans from equity stripping, refinances that didn't truly benefit them and just generated a commission. But one of the big things that we see in VA loans now, you can't turn around and not see a Rocket Mortgage commercial. Rocket does VA loans, they're not big on it, but in the VA space, we have 3 or 4 lenders that market aggressively to veterans and tell them how many veteran members they have and how many veteran members they've helped. And I don't want to say I don't use the word predatory with them because they're not doing things that are just burying veterans, but there are some big negatives to going with one of the big call center lenders. What I like to say, so really what do we have? We've got Veterans United and New Day, which are mortgage banks that they target veterans exclusively. And then we also have USAA and Navy Federal Credit Union that both do a lot of VA loans. And all of them want to lead by saying, hey, we service veterans, we help veterans, look at all the veterans we've helped. But when you look, we have the data. Christopher Griffith over at Vetted VA has the data. They charge higher rates, they charge higher fees, they have overlays. So without just ticking off bullet points, Jason, what do you tell someone? Because I know for a fact with the volume of VA loans that you do, you're talking to people who said, "Hey, I'm already pre-approved with Veterans United." How does that conversation go? And what do you tell them is the benefit to working with an independent mortgage professional versus someone in a call center working for a place like Veterans United?
Sure. So my biggest competitor is myself, me not doing what it is I need to get done every day, me get distracted. But I would say the one bank that is a competitor that I hear on a daily basis is Navy Fed, because they've got a big presence in my local area, and I was in the Navy, so I get a lot of military referrals, Navy referrals, which everybody already has a banking relationship with Navy Fed. What I say is that I lead by education, just like we all do here. Of we veterans, and I speak very with high level of confidence that representing a majority of veterans are very gullible. We are very gullible, and we were taught to be gullible in the military. Right? It was don't question the chain of command. Go do what you're told. Say yes sir, no ma'am, and go take that bullet. Go into that compartment that you might die in because it's filling with water. Go fight that fire. Go run to that foxhole. Go do whatever without questioning. And the military has to be that way. So that gets ingrained into us. And we don't have the ability to question the chain of command. Well, now that you're out, or even if you're not out, you're still active duty, but you're making non-military decisions. A lot of these lenders are preying on our lack of questioning. So, like, it disgusts me that New Day USA uses, oh, General so and so wants you to refi. And maybe I get sued because I'm saying this, but yeah, but that's just such a disgusting thing that some general is putting his name on sending these letters to veterans to try to prey on that gullibility that we have because like, oh well, general told me that I'm gonna, Sergeant so and so is gonna call that and say, okay, well, I want to refire, I want to buy, or I want to pre-qualify because of that. So I educate them like, look, you are able to have independent thought and question and shop around and discuss your finances at a different level than just being yes sir, no ma'am, do whatever it is that you're told to do. So that's what I think is so disgusting about these companies that are branding themselves in that direction to capitalize on us veterans that just want to do the right thing all the time and we just do what we're told.
So what are the biggest downsides that you see to working with one of those lenders? And I will back up and say, I don't believe they're predatory. They're not killing people. They're giving people suboptimal loans that that they can get better terms, they can get better service, better outcomes other places. So when I say better, what does better look like?
Yeah. So I mean, I think the one thing that comes up often, I think with Veterans United, for example, is I think they're capped at, or you have to have a 640 credit score or higher with them, if I'm correct. And in my markets, I mostly run into them when I do on Long Island. I do a decent amount of VA loans in Long Island, and we'll come across consumers that will, like Jason said, will take that as face value and say, I can't get a VA loan. I have a 628 credit score, and they'll go back to doing what they do and say I have to wait and kind of following command and whatever. And so we need to be out there in full force. We do it through our service with Vetted VA to educate and remind them to look around and ask questions and not just kind of take things as they're being told. So that's the main overlay I'm exposed to. I think the other thing, the larger an organization, the more diluted their service is going to be. And I say this about them, and I also say this about large retail banks: is listen, Wells Fargo clearly is doing something right. They close a gazillion loans a year. There's a lot of people at Wells Fargo and call centers that if you end up in their hands, it's going to be an absolutely atrocious experience. If you were properly referred to a mortgage banker at Wells Fargo who's been doing this for 20 years, you have a good chance that he's going to hold your hand through the experience and get you to the closing table with minimal pain. And that transcends, product type. When you go to these larger call center size places or just these massive organizations, they spend so much money on marketing and branding and endorsements that they don't typically have just the quality of the loan officer that you're going to get at a smaller place. Like Jason said, it ties in perfectly. His biggest competition is himself. That means he's waking up every day. There's no one out there spending $1 million for his brand to get calls to come in the door. He's going out there working for them loan by loan. He knows he has to deliver an outstanding service to do so. And so that's typically just why working with any kind of smaller institution and working directly with an individual who you've been referred to is going to give you just a huge head start on the likelihood that your experience is going to be great and that you're going to get coached and advised properly. And we all know that our rates and our fees are almost always, if not always, lower than these competitors that we're dealing with. And that's first and foremost. We'll set our eyes on loan estimates that have a great rate, and the veteran won't look in box A and see how many points they're being charged. It was never explained to them. They don't even know what a point is or how that dollar amount is contributing to the rest of their closing costs. They maybe just believe that that's how this loan works and their total closing costs are X and that's what they have to be. And so I've yet to see really a veteran come to me and say, hey, check this out. I'm well aware that I'm being charged 2 points. I understand what they represent and how they could go up or down. No, you just get something handed to you and you ask them, you aware of this? And 9 out of 10 times they'd say, no, I didn't know. Thanks for pointing that out. Can you explain that to me? And that's baffling, right? I mean, it's hard enough to go through this process and get to the other end and even close and own a home. to not have an advisor who's right by your side, proactively walking you through all the, the important documentation. There's a lot of stuff you could kind of gloss over. But the important documentation as a loan estimate is it's mind-boggling, and it's frustrating, and it's also an opportunity for us to step up to the plate and look great and take care of the veteran.
And
I love you said that about the Bank of America loan officer. That was good because absolutely this is not meant to be a bash fest. Please, if you're watching this, it's not meant to be a bash fest of loan officers that are brokers by no means. Either at every institution, there's gonna be great loan officers, there's gonna be crummy loan officers. There's gonna be great realtors at real estate brokers, there's gonna be horrible real estate agents at a brokerage. And there's brokers out there that are horrible. I know people, I know brokers that I wish went to retail so that they took their bad name to the real estate side and not not tarnish the name of brokers. So by absolutely there's good loan officers at United. I've got a specific example. I got called, it's probably 2 months ago, 3 months ago, by a client. Said, hey, I was told to shop around. I found you on Google. You got great reviews. What can you do for me? And so I started talking to him, and he was pre-qualified with Veterans United. He was under contract with Veterans United. And I, said, well, I'm gonna be beat. I kind of laughed at, when they said Veterans United. I said, oh, this is gonna be easy slam dunk thing. So I pre-qualified him, issued him disclosures, locked him, issued disclosures. I was beat Veterans United. It was tremendously large change. The loan officer at Veterans United had done 2 loans for this guy in the past. So this guy had a long-standing, multi-year relationship with his loan officer. The loan officer actually came back, didn't match me. I was still better than him, but because this loan officer was such a friend, I guess, of the veteran still chose Veterans United at a higher rate, higher fees than me. And I'm fine with that because he felt comfortable with a $300,000, $400,000 transaction with somebody that he had, years of history on. So by absolutely, there are good loan officers at VU, at Navy Fed, at Bank of America, wherever. But I would offer that if you looked at the talent pool as a whole, there's going to be a lot less, I want to say, empathy, a lot less level of care for most loan officers because you're going to be a one and done. You're not going to send them referrals. You're not going to come to them for a refi. You're just a number on a call center versus where you go to a small independent, either a mortgage broker, preferably, or maybe you find a small retail branch somewhere that has some really good loan officers that really care. It's all about the level of care and the level of skill and level of experience, much more than it is the channel where that loan comes from.
You said 2 things that were really important, and I picked up on what Scott said with a bank loan officer and what you said. I was doing an interview a week or so ago, probably 2 weeks ago, with a vetted VA realtor, and she mentioned, I've closed deals with Veterans United, and you get with the right team, it goes very smoothly. The problem is that is not, it's very rare. It's a small subset in there. And that's true of almost anything. Like we can sit here and tell you similar things about Rocket Mortgage. Well, I know guys that, like, it's easy to sit here and say, oh, it's kids in a call center, they don't know anything. But I know guys that go there for 3-4 years. They look around, they go, hey, I'm pretty smart, I got this. And then they go out into the broker channel and you're like, yeah, that's a real good loan officer. And if you got them while they were still at Rocket, you got a very good loan officer. It's just the numbers being in your favor. And what I would say, where the whole point of this conversation is, the worst thing you can do is believe the marketing and look at your monthly bank statement from Navy Fed and go, I'm going to Navy Fed. Or you search for VA loan, and Veterans United is always the top spot in the paid advertisement, and go to them and don't look and don't compare your options. Jason, your example of saying, hey, this guy came to me, I showed him I could save him money, I could save him in interest rate, and he made an educated decision and said, I'm comfortable with my relationship here. That's all you can ask for, is making an educated decision. Most people are going down that path and paying too much money and having a subpar experience without even giving themselves the opportunity. So if you're inclined to do business with any of those places, 1,000%, start with them, talk to them first, get the numbers from them, but make sure you're talking to an independent professional that does a lot of VA loans, that's out in the market, that works closely with realtors. I happen to know, again, without naming names, here in Southern California, agents just will not accept an offer with one of those groups pre-approval letters. So it's like, and maybe that changes when there's 2 offers on a house and they have to pick, but when there's
Totally.
12 offers on a house, they're going to go, hey, we're not dealing with that. I've had enough bad experiences with that. We're not doing it. So and the crazy thing is, I've had clients. She actually just texted while we're on here, and I just sent her an updated pre-approval letter. She came to me. She had talked to all 4 of them, been pre-approved by all 4 of them, and was unimpressed by all 4 of them. They were all pretty similar. None of them were terrible. They were just kind of so. It's definitely an interesting step in the process. And again, just do your shopping and your education. And I would say that, Scott and I probably do a lot more conventional business than we do VA and FHA, but all the way around. Don't talk to just one person. 70-something% of borrowers will get the loan from the first person that they talk to. And to me, that's crazy. Like, what are the odds that the first person you talk to was the best loan officer that was going to give you the best service, knowledge, and advice, and or have the best terms for you? It's pretty unlikely. So I tell people, if you talk to 3 loan officers and you choose to work with one of the other ones, I didn't do my job. I did not impress you. I did not show up and say, hey, this is better advice, better terms, and feels like it's going to be a better experience for me. So I'm never going to be mad at someone for that. And I think we would have much better outcomes throughout the industry if everyone talked to at least 2 lenders before they moved on and made a decision.
Well, I think that's the basis of Find My Way Home, right? I mean, like, we're generally the second or third or fourth or fifth person we talk to. Like, I had a great conversation this evening in my driveway as I was driving home. I got Alex sent me somebody. I was talking to this lady. She had been turned down multiple times by multiple places, and I'm listening to her. I'm answering the in-depth questions. It's not a VA deal, and the lady's got good credit. She just has no income and no assets. And when I say no income, she's making $1,400 a month, Social Security. That's her only income, and she has nothing saved. So she was calling about USDA loans. And whenever I got into, okay, well, I said, ma'am, I said, please take this, coming from a humble heart. I'm trying to be a friend here and tell you your situation is never going to qualify, and here's why. There's rules on debt income ratio limit because that's a risk tolerance in a loan risk calculation. And with your income, you're only going to be able to qualify for about a $60,000 or $70,000 loan, and you're looking to buy $200,000-$300,000 piece of land and then build on it. I said it's just not going to work. And so if you understand just what the federal government requirements are for risk tolerance, that of stuff that gets bundled into mortgage-backed securities and sold on Wall Street, which affects everybody, that just isn't going to meet that risk tolerance. And she's like, wow. She goes, no one's ever, they just told me no, or they just didn't call me back. You're the first person that cared enough to actually explain why. She goes, I just need to reset. She goes, I understand my dreams are just too big for my income. I said, yeah, absolutely. Go get another job. I said, you get another job, we've got a whole other equation, that we're calculating from. So it's just a matter of having someone that cares enough to actually take the time to explain. And that's what we do here at Find My Way Home is take the time to understand your unique situation and explain, yes, yeah, absolutely, we could do this. I don't know why that chump that said no couldn't do it, or yeah, those guys that told you no already were right, and it sucks that they didn't tell you why. But here's what you need to do in order for somebody to say yes.
Scott Shang, the founder of Find My Way Home, has a saying that I'm sure I had heard it somewhere along the line, but he said it a lot when he and I first started working together 7 or 8 years ago. And he says, the answer is never no, it's not now. And there's a responsibility with not now, is explaining to someone why it's not now and what would have to change for it to be yes in the future. And a lot of these business models are predicated on generate a ton of leads. They're not people. There's just generate a ton of leads, filter through them as quickly as you can, and find the ones that are going to result in a commission. The reality is every one of these people are people. They're human beings. And most people can handle the truth. I've had some crazy people that I've gone through and explained to them that on a $30,000 a year salary, they can't buy a $600,000 house in Southern California, and they tell me I'm wrong. But that's the exception. 95, 98, 99% of people are just like what you said, Jason. They're going to thank you for breaking it down and explaining it to them. And it's not that hard. It takes 2, 3, 5 minutes of your time to leave them in a better place so that they're not continuing to make more calls hoping for an answer that just doesn't exist. So we've been going a little bit longer than an hour here. I'm sure we could talk about VA loans for the rest of the night, but we've covered our main bullet points of what we wanted people to know and to educate them and empower them to make better decisions and make it more likely that they're getting their offers accepted out in this market and getting the best terms. But before we say goodbye for the night, I want to give both of you guys an opportunity. Jason, anything else that you would like to throw out there? If you had the opportunity to talk to a hypothetical VA borrower out there, what would you like to say?
What I would say is get educated. The whole trust but verify thing is so important. Going all the way back to President Reagan, you've got to understand what it is you're buying. Before you buy it. And a loan is a product. You're buying a loan. You're choosing your loan officer. You're choosing your loan terms. You've got to understand what it is. You got to get educated. Research, join groups. I wrote a book called VA Mortgage Declassified. I sell on Amazon. You contact me, I'll send you a free copy. Get educated before you make any significant decisions.
And how about yourself, Scott? Anything else you want to
Yeah,
add?
I mean, no, I think Jason's spot on, but I'd go a step further and say talk to other veterans, right? Veterans, they band together. They've been through things together, and often get referrals from other veterans. I mean, that's one of the best. I would say my past VA clients probably are the best referral sources for other veterans than any other like non-VA client. But even if they're not coming to me through a referral, or I'm not even talking to them, the best thing you can do is speak to your buddies, your friends, and learn about what they went through, what their experience was like. Get a layman's term, lowdown on what this thing's all about, and then also be patient. I think it's not so much a message for just veterans, but that's the subject. I think veterans they don't necessarily control, or active duty members don't necessarily control where their next location is and when it is, and they're under a lot more pressure to find a place to live if they're not living on a base when they move to their next destination. And before we had this housing market crunch, it was usually if you have enough time and enough, if you're organized, by the time you move to a place or shortly thereafter, you can buy a home, get your VA loan, and move in. And now it's a lot harder, and people's rents are going up and things like that. It's a tough time out there, but I think if you're patient and you don't, and you're set up properly, and you've done your research, and you have a good agent representing you, your opportunity will come to buy a home, and you'll end up in a house with a great VA loan, and you'll kind of live happily ever after. But things change quickly. Things turn quickly. Interest rates turned very quick on us here. The housing crunch and the supply shortage all came, but everything moves in cycles. And I think, in due time, things will moderate and the marketplace will be more balanced with buyers and sellers. So, be optimistic and be patient, and your opportunity will come.
All of that great advice. I think any veteran looking at entering the housing market would do well to have watched this hour. So hopefully we can get it out and get it in front of folks. On the topic that Jason was saying of educate yourself, I want to throw a couple of resources up here. Obviously, Find My Way Home. If you're seeing this on YouTube or you're not on our website, findmywayhome.com. We have a network of expert lenders around the country. It's not just the three of us. We've got nearly every state covered with people who can give you this level of knowledge, expertise, and care and concern. All of that. So if you want to get connected, you want to ask a question, go out there. If you're a veteran and you want to get involved in the conversation around VA loans, check out Vetted VA. You do have to put in a request, but within a day or so, they'll get you approved. You can get in there, and a massive library of questions answered, and folks just like us in there moderating questions and answers all day, every day. So, gentlemen, I appreciate you taking time from your busy evening. Appreciate you giving and sharing your wisdom. And I'm sure we'll be back here again in the near future answering some more questions.
Good hanging out with you guys.
Absolutely.
All right.
Have a great night.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.